Otherwise, good morning. Now, like I said, literally, I feel sad for Liz when she's trying to host because the thing is big and you guys keep responding. You haven't adjusted to our new big space. You keep thinking of us being in Bethsaida Park and it's small and it's nice, So when we say good morning in Bethsaida Park, you say good morning. It still works. Here you have to sort of keep shouting, right? So good morning. There you go. See, it feels like we are few of us. My name is Nash Orogoro. If we haven't met, and I have the privilege of leading this amazing, amazing community. So, if you came today for the first time or after a long, long time, you came at an amazing time because we are somewhere trying to wrestle with this question of what God might be calling us to be and to live from this particular place. That there's this conviction that God is not doing all these things new and big and crazy as they are, just so that we could continue to be normal in our ordinariness, as it were. That is almost an intention that God has with our being here. And last week we talked about this whole concept of being a people who love and love lavishly. Being a people who love and love lavishly. And today, Richie, if you could just, there you, no, you just need to do this thing. And today we would dig a little bit deeper in exploring this concept of what it looks like for us to be a generous presence in this, our neighborhood, our world, as a people of God. So on that note, let's just get this figured out so you can follow along. But anyway, now we can't multitask. So this idea of being a people who occupy this world with a sense of generosity, but also that we let our presence be actually something that we bring into the world, more than just our material things. Actually, our presence is something that we bring into the world. And we started by reading this story that I'm sure pretty much we know. Basically, it's like one of those stories for growing up. And Jesus, we learn that is going through this particular place, and he's navigating his way through town. But there's this short man that we learn wants to hang out with Jesus, and his answer to figuring that out is, let me go up a tree and then Jesus will come up. Then I'll get an elevated view of what it looks like to see this Jesus. And then Jesus comes and asks them to invite him to his house, as it were. I just think it's important to think through this for a moment, because I think this story captures pretty much everything that I want to say as far as being a people of generous presence looks like in this world. So it says that Jesus went to Jericho and made his way through the town. So basically, he was just walking. And then there's this man called Zacchaeus. And Luke feels the need to tell us that this guy was a tax collector and a chief tax collector within the region. And of course, as a result, he had become extremely rich. But the one thing he couldn't seem to get is to look at Jesus. He was too short, and so he had to go ahead and climb a fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. And then when Jesus comes to him, he looked up at Zacchaeus and he called by name. Zacchaeus, he said, "Quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today." And Zacchaeus quickly climbs down and takes Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But of course, the people were displeased. He being Jesus, he has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, not just a sinner, but a notorious one at that. And then, meanwhile, as they are being mad and Jesus is having a ball, whatever it is, Zacchaeus, whatever happens, by Jesus coming over, whatever happens, Zacchaeus stands up before the Lord and he says, "I will give half of my wealth to the poor, Lord. And if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much." And Jesus concludes this whole conversation by saying, "Salvation has come to this home today. For this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost." He came to seek and save those who are lost. But it's a simple story, and I think we have wrestled with this, and you have grown hearing about it. It's almost like it's a parody. But hidden within it are all these really interesting gems, as it were. First, we Luke goes out of his to say, this is not a favorite guy for anyone. Right? And even Jesus, when he says that, Jesus came to seek and save those who are lost, even Jesus seems to say he doesn't have a delusion of who Zacchaeus is. Zacchaeus is a rich, wealthy person who has gotten wealth because of by being a corrupt official, as it were. So even Jesus almost concludes this idea of, you, of all the people, you are properly lost, as it were. And Zacchaeus, we learned during this time that you had these tax collectors, and they were not loved by people primarily because the Israelites at this point were under Roman Empire, as it were, and because they were under Roman Empire, the basic thing, Rome needed to collect taxes, and they couldn't employ tax collectors. They didn't have a version of their KRA. So what they would do is, in the whatever region, they would find some person, and then they would empower that person to be collecting the tax for Rome and make sure that they get sent to Rome. But because they are not getting a salary or anything like that, it was almost assumed that they would get wealthy or they would be sustained by squeezing a little bit more of people. So if the Roman Empire wants 100 bob, maybe they will make it 110 shillings, And because this whole thing, first, even us here, it's not like we have become fanatics about taxes. We are the people still working our way through that. And all the people I know who, given a chance, we would avoid paying taxes, So even these people, imagine these guys are under oppression. So you come along and you're one of us, but here you are implementing some policy of this occupying force. But not only are you implementing this policy, you're actually harassing us. Like you're getting rich by squeezing us out. So it's almost like Zacchaeus had gotten rich at the expense of the whole region, as it were. And because he's a cheap tax collector within a region, he must have been quite someone. And it's that tiny little thing that we get told there that he was also a very short man, And you can imagine how these things work. Like a short, plump man who is just being hated by everybody around the place. And then Jesus decides that he's going to walk by this place. And Zacchaeus decides, okay, let me just see who this person is that they have been causing chaos about. And then boom, Jesus says, today I want to come and be a guest in your house. And whatever happens, and this is the thing that we don't even get a glimpse of the conversation that Jesus has with Zacchaeus as they are eating a meal. Like, does he present the gospel to Zacchaeus? Does he hold Zacchaeus accountable? We do not have that idea. It's actually, we just get to see two sides. It almost seems like Jesus is just in this house, eating the food, making merry, being amongst the people. And then you have on one side the community grumbling, just going like, how is a rabbi eating food with this guy? Our number one enemy. So that we get this sense of like these people, then they are so agitated. And then all we get is literally, in the midst of all this conversation, Zacchaeus gets up, a completely transformed person. He says, I'll give away half my wealth to my poor. That's a big commitment. But also, if I have cheated people on their taxes, I'll give them back 4 times as much. And this is a big deal because this is not if I have cheated. You have cheated people of their taxes. It's the only way you have gotten rich. So you can imagine the kind of radical commitment he is making. And he's making it publicly. So you can imagine that the next day there actually are people lined up on his door to say, dude, you cheated me of my taxes, give me 4 times. And of course, there must have been people also who saw this as an opportunity to take advantage of it. But how does this rich person who almost insulates themselves from the hatred of his community by how wealthy they become, by how much material wealth they have around them, by how much they are surrounded by material things. How does this person almost come from this moment and simply say, I am going to release all of it and I'm going to live as a vulnerable person? How does that happen? And that would have been very nice to know. Like if we knew what Jesus did or said to this man, then we could be say like, if we could say and do these things, maybe some people could also be transformed. But even Jesus seems to simply respond to this moment. Salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. Almost saying this guy had consistently been dismissed. He cannot be a true Israelite if this is the kind of a person he is. He was lost, but now he's home and salvation has come to this place. And I say all that to simply come back to this simple moment, that generous presence. Our presence has transformative power. Like everything we know about this story, all we know is like what change is Jesus decided to almost take a detour and avail himself to this guy's home. And whatever that is, seems to have been so radically transformational to this guy that he cracks open and he comes out of its entire cocoon and says, let's release this whole thing. Like this idea of our presence has transformative power. It's exemplified at its best within this particular moment. That we done about talking. And I love that Jesus says that salvation has come to this home. Remember, we, especially who are Christians within this era, we only imagine that salvation comes by the sharing of the gospel, by the sharing of the words, by framing of it and articulating them very well. But in this particular moment, it turns out that all sometimes we need is to eat with someone. And having that meal transforms everything. That our presence, when it's generous and compassionate and loving, it transforms more than words ever are able to. So the question becomes almost to what degree are we, to what extent are we maximizing the presence that we carry with ourselves? Not all the ways we change things, not all the ways we are doing dramatic things, but basically by doing nothing, by being intentional and saying, let me have a meal with this person. Let me have a cup of tea with you. Let me grab a moment of something with you. Our presence has transformative power. And we'll keep coming back over and over to that so that if you miss everything, just know that's what I'm trying to simply say. That Jesus eats with this chief sinner, this tax collector, this hard man. And literally by eating that meal, it changes everything in the story that this man has been living with. So this idea that all of us, to the degree that we are breathing and walking, we carry something more dramatic than even our words. We carry our presence. And if we could leverage that well and turn it into a generous gift that we share into the world, we could very well transform societies. We could very well transform families. We could very well transform our society. So let's take this seriously. The presence that God has given you, yourself as it were. And let's wrestle a little bit with what might it take for you actually to offer your presence as a gift, as a generous gift. I think this is why I almost want to lean in a little bit more. Because a lot of times I feel like we show up in the world armored up. We show up into church armored up. We show up, we sit on our favorite seat, and we don't want even to turn this side or this side. We just want to be done. Like I said the other time, it's like we show up in church expecting ministry facing, a ministry of front, what I call a front-facing ministry. We sing from this side, we raise our hands, and a person comes and shares some words, and you can't wait for this part to be over so that you can sneak out. Some of you can be here for the past, I don't know how long we've been, like 3-4 years, and your presence has never mattered to someone in the community. Because we show up armored up. And because we show up armored up, we show up like, with our closed up, with our hearts locked away somewhere, tucked inside of ourselves. That mostly show up, especially in these our churches, almost expecting to get something. Like the only people we expect something from is the pastor and maybe the worship team and the children's pastor. Those people, like they are here to do their thing, to share their life, to express it, and to keep articulating ways of beings. But otherwise, we have very little to contribute. And here is what I want to really push hard and say, maybe your greatest gift here is your presence. Your greatest gift here is your presence and how you carry that presence and the ways you share that presence with yourself. But because we again are human beings, we are people who have been hurt. We are people who have been betrayed. We are people who have been abused. We are people who have been used. Inevitably, for our presence to actually count for something, we have to do the painful hard work of pursuing health. Like we are working at being healthy people. Not just because it's something that is important just for us, but because we become something that we can then extend to others. My big conviction is the more armored up we are, it's not a sign, it's a sign of how most and foremost we have these heartaches that we carry around that they haven't been dealt with. Therefore, it keeps saying that our presence isn't available for people. Not because something is off, but it's because I am hurting and I need to protect myself. I have something to cover, I have something to hide. And this is why you see that it's very dramatic that for this guy who is described as rich and is of course a tax collector and all this, that when Jesus comes into his life, when the presence of Jesus shows up, the big thing he does is literally release the very thing that most likely had given him the most armor. So for you, as you show up in this place, what do you come holding back from? What is it that makes you show up armored up, guarded, protected? I think this matters for especially a people in a church like Journey Village, because let me be honest, I'm your pastor, so I guess I have a bit of knowledge of who you are. You all show up into this place a little bit, not all of you, most of you show up into this place because you're a little bit suspicious of church. You're not here because I am for the church and I love it and everything they do. You have just watched way too many documentaries of all the ways pastors are evil and broken and abusive, and you have been hurt before. You know because you come from somewhere. And so when you show up in a place like this, you show up guarded because he talks with a lot of English words, but under all those different things, he's still one of them. And we have also been hurt by other church people. So you know, and I know you people, you show up and you're checking each other out. I mean, it's Mrs. Omondi. She sits next to her husband. That's you're a typical Christian. That one, stay away from. That's the one who asks you all the questions that you don't want to. And no amount of me standing up and saying, this is one of the most amazing human beings we have in our community. But she's a Christian. She's one of those Mama Kanisa type people. None of us, like I said last week, none of us shows up here neutral. And especially if you're in Journey Village, by God's grace, for whatever thing seems like God calls us to, we all are showing up here, dipping our toes back into the church world. Just dipping. So we are always more ready to leave this community than we are to be here. I just make it just one more this direction, and I'm out. And the point I'm trying to say is this, that for you to embody and be a part of the fullness that this community has to offer, you cannot avoid working on your traumas, on your heartaches. Because let's not pretend when the church hurts you, it hurts you. It's not like pretend hurt because it's Jesus, people. When that pastor most likely betrayed you and all the financial giving that you had poured into, and they turned out to be a character or something else, you are hurt. Take that seriously. Go there with Jesus. Ask yourself, so how do we move on from here? Because otherwise, however best we do here, so then what ends up happening is that we from this side, me and Agi and the people leading this whole community, we work so hard to keep making this place as comfortable as it can be for you so that you don't run away. That's not what God has called us to. God has not called us to create this to be a comfortable place so that you don't run away from it. God has a bigger vision about what it is. If He wanted to make this comfortable, we wouldn't be here looking the way it is looking. So I'm trying to say this, if you're going to be a people of generous presence, we need to also say and name all the ways we have been hurt by whatever it is, the church, the pastors. But also, let's be honest and say part of us who are doing that work is stop confusing every single idiot of person who claims to be a man of God with all the rest of the people. That one particular person is abusive, and it turns out there's a lot of them that are abusive. But that doesn't mean that all the people are then therefore abusive. You have to do the hard work of saying, eventually, if I'm going to be part of a body of Christ, a certain healing has to happen. Otherwise, we are just going to be here playing games, trying to entice one another. So as soon as I try to get a little bit into your life, you run this other direction. That's directed to all the people I'm trying to have coffee, and they are running away from me. I promise you. But it is other than just other than it being within a church community. I think it also has something to do with how we show up in the world generally. So this is not just about how we show up in church. Yeah, I'm saying how we show up in life generally. And this verse, we talked a little bit about it last week, which is a part of the commandment that Jesus says are the biggest. Love others as well as you love yourself. And it is fascinating thing because I feel like we put a bit of emphasis to love others. And I think loving others is important. And someone interpreted this that you need to love others as well as you love yourself. Like just if I love myself to 30 degrees, I need to love others like with that degrees. And that's one interpretation. I've been reflecting on this music and I thought about it. What if also we understood this to mean is love others as you're also loving yourself. There is this dynamic happening. So love your neighbor as well as you love yourself. Meaning, as you're loving your neighbor well, also make sure that you're also loving yourself well. And what does loving yourself well look like? It's so funny that in church world, we don't have clear language of that. It feels like if you say you are working at loving yourself, it almost means like you're being selfish. But the thing about it is, unless we do the hard work to love ourselves well, first, we are never going to trust our presence to be a gift to someone else because it's just 2 inches for them to find out about this thing that you have here. And that thing crushes and destroys you. But we can't help you deal with that thing. It's only you who have to enter into that. Again, God has been so amazing. This short small community, we have several therapists and counselors. I'm like, it's insane that we don't take advantage of that and just say, wait, I have this anger issue that I need to work through, and it keeps getting in the way of me being a present presence. There's no way. I mean, you can try to pray it away, your anger. But a lot of the times, the way we live in 2024 is that there are all these people who are exceptionally well equipped who can help us re-enter all those moments that we need to enter into and then come out back as a gift to the world. So I'm emphasizing that maybe part of the reason we struggle a lot to be a gift, for our presence to be a gift, is that we are so deeply wounded. And none of us is doing the hard work to actually seek and pursue healing in that space, and therefore to be healthy, so then you can show up and have something to, have even a presence to offer. You could argue a different way that the only way that actually this transformation happens with this tax collector is because Jesus is a particular kind of a person. And when this particular kind of a person shows up, whatever their presence is, it leaks healing. It allows for others to actually flourish. So I want to invite us to take our presence seriously, but maybe I'm more interested deeper than that to say, but are we doing the hard work to actually say, our presence is increasingly becoming a wholesome gift to the world? Most of the times, we just settle. This is who I am. But then you are bitter. And any attempt to show up as a gift to the world leaves the world more bitter than well. But you are grieving. And someone hasn't even helped you name that is grief. So you're just grumpy. Oh, you hide behind a temperament. I'm just an introvert. Almost like, therefore, my presence doesn't count. But there is work even for introverts and extroverts to do so they actually show up and say, there is room for people here. So none of us gets to be exempt because God has breathed life into us. But that life shows up as a presence. The question, I guess, the bigger question here to ask at this level is, what is your presence turning out to be? Is your presence something that you hide? You tuck it behind layers and layers and layers and layers. For some reason that maybe you know, and for some reasons you don't even know. Maybe you show up and you're working so hard to hide behind, because you carry this deep shame. Perhaps because you don't have a job. And it looks like all of us within Journey Village, we have good jobs and we are constantly being promoted. So you carry this shame. And you work so hard to edit yourself out of the community story. But what you need to do is actually do the hard work of sitting in and wrestling with God about your shame, about not having a job, so that then it starts being the thing that is leading you. Some of you, You have to do the deep hard work to make sense with the pain that has been caused to you in the past, or the pain that you caused in the past, because it keeps interrupting and interfering with what your presence could be. Some of you're here and you know yourself. That's because your marriage isn't going as great as you imagined it to be. And the rest of us seem like we have great, incredible, perfect marriage, made in heaven kind of things. You're just like, I need to step back. I don't have something to offer. But here is the thing. Your presence matters. It can transform things. Not just within church communities, but within the families, within the workspace, within the neighborhood where we are. This idea of we're supposed to love others, but also as we are loving ourselves. And can I be honest with you? We Christians are terrible at loving ourselves. I mean, not just us, but even the world is terrible at it. We quit loving ourselves with, soaking ourselves with endlessly consumative experiences. That's what I mean. To love yourself well means that you don't deserve to keep living as a bitter person. God can restore. To love yourself means that you come to the conclusion that I don't have to keep living in shame. Sure, I lost that job. Sure, I got that baby. Sure, this happened not the way I imagined it. But you get to do the hard work to release shame. And because not very few of us do that work, then what ends up being reflected in communities like this, within our workspaces, within our family meetings, is that then there's very little presence that people bring to the moment. Everybody just shows up armored up. So please, as a community, maybe be the kinds of people who are actually doing the work of loving ourselves well, so that then we are able to love others. Otherwise, we can keep pressuring one another to love one another here, and we can talk about all the one another's that there are in the Bible. But there is no self, there's no you, there's no presence, there's nothing in you to even actually offer into the space. Because it's so trapped in sin and pain and loss and struggles. And that counts. But also not only that, then this idea of pursuing health with our presence also counts, because then whatever we eventually decide to show up, whether we show up at 0.0005%, but whatever it is, it's still some form of showing up somewhere. If we are not doing the hard work of loving ourselves well and pursuing healing and pursuing restoration and pursuing all those redemptive things that God talks about, someone said, and I think I've said this before in this chat, this is a Catholic priest who said that if we do not transform our pain, meaning if we don't do the hard work to wade through the mess so that we can love ourselves well, so we can enter the pain and trauma we carry from our childhood, from our workspaces, from all these things, if we do not transform our pain, we will most assuredly, almost guarantee that we are going to transmit it. And who does it get to be transmitted to? It's those closest to us. It's our families, it's our neighbors, it's our co-workers. Invariably, unfortunately, the most vulnerable, it is our children. So you may be here and you don't even want to explore all the ways you have been wounded and hurt because you are in this particular marriage. You are thinking that this is what a good Christian wife does. You just soak it in. Inevitably, it gets passed on to your children because it leaks out. It leaks out. So if we do not transform our pain, we will most assuredly transmit it. So I'm like saying, maybe the greatest act of loving yourself in 2024 is seeking the necessary help for you to be a more healthy person, for you to release all the things that cause us to be armored up. Us to work out all the frustrations we carry around with our parents, with our brothers, with our neighbors. Because unless and until we do that, our presence is never a gift. As a matter of fact, our presence, just becomes a conduit of transmitting our pain. People can hide for years until they found someone who they trust enough. I mean, no wonder spaces like these was become very, very wounding, because I, as a pastor, haven't done the hard work to wade through all my shenanigans and sin and brokenness and everything else. And then all of you come and you bring your open hearts. And even my best attempts to laugh at you just ends up being nothing more than just transmitting my pain. Have you found, I don't know how much of church world you guys are logged in, but there are all these pastors who like driven and perfectionists and demanding so much of their congregants, like almost being a part of a church is like being part of a military school. Of course, we say like, oh, this is loving. This church, we need to have a spirit of excellence, which is amazing. Only that it means like we almost have to ride the people to death. And almost someone wants to just call the pastor behind the net and say, dude, what are you trying to do? Where are you going? Just breathe. But so the biggest thing about working our presence is the idea that we have all these pain and traumas and we need to work it through. Every single one of you have something to work with. Especially the men. Let's talk to the men for a moment. Especially the men. All of you just coming to church and sitting, and just under, like literally 2 layers below this, it's just a swathe of anger and disappointment. And how that shows up is in those you love the most. Not to us. Thank God you don't love us that well. But it is your spouse who bears the pain of it. It's your children. That critical spirit. Those ones that just come at that particular moment. And your house just becomes a freezing hell. Like for everybody, even walking on eggshells in a nice attempt, everybody just like want to not exist in your presence. Just whisper. Now, if it's not this group of men, some of you grew up in homes like those. So may we not be the ones who transmit that to the next generation for the life of God. If we have to deal with our pain and frustration and all those different things for us to be a presence, there's another thing that we need to deal with, especially because we are in Nairobi. Well, we're in Kikuyu. But hey, tuko Nairobi hata sisi. But we are in this city. This city is ours, And the one big thing that our generation, people like you and I have to wrestle with is how much of our busyness and distractions we have around that keep eating at our capacity to be present. And it's so fascinating. I know this, and these are things that we're going to be digging deeper across the day, because I think almost for us, people like us, the greatest sin isn't even to do with alcoholism and most of those different things. It has something to do with things that we have normalized as a people. As soon as this service is over, you look at your schedule for next week, and everybody just would be like, whoa. This idea of the busyness and distraction, which means that none of us actually is available long enough to offer their presence. Statistics tell us literally that for a church like this in an urban town, literally, if I see you here once a month, I should include you as one of the most committed members of Journey Village. Because you are busy people. But here's the thing. In our business, and because our business is occupying some space, like the question becomes, what gets lost in that process? Busyness and distractions. And again, like I said, we'll dig into this a little bit as we go on. But the lady said, quoted by this guy called John Mark, Corrie and Bone was one of the Christian saints, as it were. One said that if the devil can't make you sin, he will make you busy. And there's truth in that. Because it comes to this conclusion that both sin and busyness have the same exact effect. They cut off your connection to God, to other people, and even to your own soul. You can talk about busy and distraction, and I'll be the first one. If I have a slow week, I start panicking. It's like, wow, is the world coming to an end? Who am I? Do I want to be a pastor anymore? I want to be busy. It infuses my life with a sense of meaning, whatever meaning that looks like. So I want to be the guy who is going. I kid you not, and we'll talk again a little bit more about this, like I said, about distractions. There are all these studies that are telling us the power of distraction that is your mobile phone. I think at least in the States, they say on average, we touch and reach for our phone almost like 4,000 times in a day. Now, I read this sometimes back, and I was like, oh, of course, that's not me. So I've been intentional. And I kid you not. I go into a supermarket, and there's like a moment of boredness. I reach for my phone. And I'm not even to a lot of this, but if you're looking at my phone, you see, I have almost 5 websites that I go constantly, Daily Nation, The Star. I'm caught up in American politics. I follow their thing, I'm not kidding. It's I do it way, way worse than I thought. So we are distracted constantly. Try to make eye contact with people is next to impossible. But the idea is, Well, that is happening and all that is true. The thing that we never make a connection from that's doing that to this other reality is that we are cutting off our connection from other people, to God, and even to our own soul. So, what is distracting you from actually being present to someone? What is distracting you? So you have to do the hard work to pursue health and wholeness so that actually our presence shows up as a gift. And then 2, we almost have to guard now against that presence from being taken over by busyness and then by distractions, as it were. Things that Jesus seems to embody in this particular moment so well. And then after that, then we have this idea of being generous with our presence. And this is what I really wanted to just learn this conversation. Being generous with our presence. I kid you not, it breaks my heart how very few of us who inhabit urban spaces. I mean, in the village, I think life flows at a different wavelength than everything else, But it's amazing, how I don't know. I told you sometimes back, how our neighborhood, we have this drive, and it was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And we'll be trying to get the people to meet, and no one is available to meet or anything like that. But I just figured out, not me, maybe Mudhoni especially, figured out, these people, they're just so scared of inviting one another to their homes. Just scared. Because we live in I don't know, amazing if you come from a different tribe, but we of the Kikuyu tradition, we guard everything. We don't want people to know how our house looks like. So there's a guy for hey man, there are people in our house. It's a miracle, And then they are your neighbors. And I guess we lessened this thing with Mudhoni, and then it came to a crisis some time back, and Mudhoni was let's just host them. Now, my thing was, them they have bought land here, them they have built here, them this is there. They don't have another home to go to. Since we are renting, God is going to bless us with multiple land so we can live away from this place. So I'm why are we the ones to take initiative? Thank God I married well, so my wife was it's okay, just shut up. I'm telling them to come. And so they'll do that. And then so the other Sunday, later we had to go home because these people from the neighborhood were coming. And I kid you not, this thing of open, now of course we are pastors, and so being in our houses, it's not that complicated or whatever. But these guys were actively shocked for, they are welcoming us. And I would say, I couldn't fathom this. How is this a radical thing? And the truth of the matter is, I think we are more acquainted with protecting our spaces that we have forgotten what it looks like to actually then offer those spaces back into the society and to the world as a gift. We guard our spaces. We guard our homes. And there's a truth to there's an essential necessity to that we want our home to actually be a safe home for all of us and everything else. So I'm not dissing that. But I'm also saying that sometimes we do that so well that we lose our capacity to actually say, let's be generous, both with our spaces and with our presence. But the bigger thing about this whole thing away from houses, I think if you could just boil down to everything that I'm challenging you to, is simply this, to step out in vulnerability. I think that's a simple way I would just narrow this idea of how do we live as a generous presence in the world. It's just that we become people who step out in vulnerability. Within our workspaces, within our businesses, within our marriages, with our parenting. Let something crack through. Let something come out of there. Let some light come out into the world. And let someone into that world. I have these amazing young men. This group of young men were just working out very, very crazy things as it were, and also in the house last time. And I can almost tell who is struggling in this group by who is most open in their sharing. Who is most struggling by who shares the least, There are the people who are working very hard to just move on to the next person. Don't ask me any question. Don't bug me. Just move on to the next question. It's just simply this idea of we don't know how to step out in vulnerability. Again, especially for we guys, we are so impossible with this. We are sorting out the world, different things in our minds, so then when we show up, we just show up and report to a conclusion. Oh, we got a car. Oh, really? That's amazing. Oh, we got a baby. Oh, even that's a stretch. Most likely we see a baby and we're like, hey, no, nani. It's complicated for us dudes, But that has been elevated into an art, and there's a reason for that. And guys just say, "Oh, but this is how guys are." I'm like, no, we just the least equip people to walk through our traumas. Our lives are meant to be spared out in vulnerability, stepping out. But they also included those words intentionally, stepping out and in vulnerability, because again, most of the times what you see is you find people who step out. They just step out, and they are like seemingly vulnerable. But they are not until they do something crazy. I mean, one of the tragic stories we have heard out of the church world. I mean, this is a small church problems. Anyway, this pastor of this amazing church was going through something. They was struggling with some sexual sin problem, addictions, whatever the thing is. And so they said, "Oh my God, like for me to move this forward, I have to bring around a group of men so we can have a weekly, monthly meeting where we check in on one another." And this was going well. Like this group of men, they showed up almost once a month for years. I think maybe almost 3-4 years. They showed up and they shared their brokenness and shared their heart, and they did the thing. And this man was, of course, a part of it. He's the leading of it, as it were, and most likely it was also helpful to him. Until, I think sometime this year or earlier that year, whatever, it came out that all along he was having this insane affair with his associate pastor. And like you get this thing and you're like, are you kidding me? And what do these men do? Like, but we met every week and we shared our hearts out. And like kumbe, it turns out this thing was happening. And the thing that rocked that community was, but what more could we have done to support our pastor? Because we know how to have an accountability group. And it was there. But what happens when you have an accountability group and actually you're showing up to the accountability group, but you're never ever bringing up yourself? So we then all come to this space. Again, I've been in church world for forever. So we all come into these spaces where we can be in all the necessary spaces. Like we are in men's ministry. We are in a prayer team. We are in all these different. And somehow, because we are really, really gifted by God, these very things become the very insulation from us living lives of brokenness. It becomes the thing that actually cover us so we can be out there broken. So when I say step out in vulnerability, I mean, of course, here it would be nice to see more of you, to know more of your stories, to have this beautiful infusion of this thing becoming actually a body of Christ. But also, I mean that to be true of most of the places you find yourselves in your workspaces. Are there spaces like there you can actually show up and step out in vulnerability? At the end, as I bring this home, I think what I'm trying to ask you to, generous presence is not a lot of theological framing. It simply boils down to simple word, courage. Remember, Jesus is just walking. He just have decided to keep on with his schedule. So he had to stop. He has to look this guy. And there's a cost to that because all these people talking about why is he with that person? And I don't even think Jesus knows that this guy is going to make this crazy decision. All he does is he responds to this guy and says, "I'm going to eat with you." And that's a crazy risk. What I'm trying to say is, might we have some courage left in all of us? That's what it says, that we can show up in the world with a generosity spirit. Brené Brown, one of the leading expert in this kind of conversation, simply says that the origin of the word courage comes from the word car, which simply means the heart. And it means to completely share your story with your whole heart. That's all I'm asking us. To simply show up and share our story with our whole heart. Not bits and pieces of it, not driplets of pieces of it, not hiding away all these pieces of it. But for us to even get there, we have to do the hard, painful work of healing. This is our final story about Jesus. Now, this time he is resurrected. And you know the story very well. He's walking with his two disciples who are running away from Jerusalem. They are heading to Emmaus, which is they are going away from where Jesus was crucified because almost they have given up. They're like, this is not our story. This cannot be what we are meant to be. This guy who died on the cross could not be the guy we were supposed to give our lives to. So they are leaving Jerusalem, also most likely in fear of what would happen to them as the authorities start taking over this community of Jesus. And so Jesus walks with them and they shares all these crazy things. And eventually at some point in the house, he's revealed to be Jesus. And the response they have is this, which is like the most powerful response I've had. Like they say to each other, didn't our hearts burn within us as he talked with us on the road and explained the scriptures to us? Notice that. They're just walking. And as they walk and as they converse, because of the presence that Jesus brings, literally their hearts are burning. And within the hour, what do these guys do? Not only were their hearts burning, and now it's been revealed that who they were walking with is Jesus Christ. And within the hour, they were on their way back to Jerusalem, right where they had run away from. They were found, then they found the 11 disciples and the others who had gathered with them and said, the Lord has really risen, appeared to Peter. But here's what I want you to hear. These guys, they were running away. They just have a walk with Jesus Christ. His presence is burning and warming their heart. And the fruit of that is them turning back and going back to the very same place they have been running to. And I come back to this one simple sentence that I've been trying to communicate so many words, that our presence, when offered generously, is transformative. Maybe what your family needs is your presence. Maybe what your relationship needs is your presence. Not to be on your phone, not to be distracted, but actually sit across the table and look each other into the eye. And I don't know what comes out of that. Our presence, when offered generously, is transformative. And I guess the simple question I want to ask today is, whose heart is being warmed by your presence? Whose heart is being burned because you're with them? Because you're in their life? Because you're showing up? Are your kids, could your kids say, but our hearts burn within us when we are hanging out with our parents because of the presence they bring to that moment? Could your spouse say that? Could your workmates say that? That your presence actually burns something wonderful and transformative as you hang out with them. I don't think we can do this again, like I come to this conclusion over and over. I don't think we can do this simply because it's done by us. I think it's something that also happens because God and Christ is working within us. And so as I invite the worship team back up, I want to invite us to the Lord's table. I want to say, come to the Lord's table. But as you come to the Lord's table, here's what I want you to really, really grapple with. What could be transformed if you actually showed up generously? If you let your presence show up generously? Not some dramatic praise out there, but the most intimate of spaces. I don't think the world is broken because there are all these global things that we haven't changed. I think the world is broken because all of us in our intimate spaces are hurting one another. Our presence to one another is not generous gift. So may Christ give us the strength and the power we need to live out this transformative presence. And where we start with that is by coming in. And he who has been warming, burning people's hearts since time immemorial, he who has been redeeming and restoring and healing and bringing people who are so far gone, so far lost and so far gone back home, may he do the same for you. So please welcome to the table, either on that side and on that side. You just get a piece of bread and some grape juice. And at the end of this next song, we will celebrate communion together.